Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
As the fight progressed, it became worse and worse to look at. No matter what the boss did, be it the party wipe skill or something else, Shiro had a counter for it. If it tried to use Earthquake, her hidden contraptions would stun him, causing his skill to fail. With Shiro taking care of all the minions and targets, both Een and Lysandra just needed to fire their skills at will. Yin's Dark Star element and Shadow element weakened the boss's defenses immensely due to their corrosion effects. As for Lysandra, her support skills and sword buffs allowed her to cause the boss massive amounts of damage. With both of them working together, the armor was nothing but decoration. Not only that, there were times where the boss would become airborne and be subjected to another wave of bullets, magic, and slashes. Dying like this without a chance to fight back wasn't a fate that raid bosses should face. Especially this one, as it had kept the city of Kairosa from progressing any further. Looking at the lifeless corpse that laid in front of him, Kamner couldn't help but shake his head. A pity for it to run into the machine goddess. Ignoring his silent prayer for the boss, Shiro checked the loot. Since their party was small with only 3 people, the sheer amount of loot they received was astounding. In addition to this, the rewards for the first clear caused them to lament the fact that she didn't join the raid earlier for the previous bosses. First clear reward of Ancient Chimera, plus Chimera Slayer title, plus Chimera Core, plus skill, Chimera Arts. The title was rather straightforward since it allowed her to suppress any kind of Chimera-type enemy. On the other hand, the Chimera Core was a weapon augment that allowed her to fuse a few skills together. If it was just these two, she wouldn't be too impressed, but it was the skill that really made the first clear worth it. Chimera Arts allows one to fuse 2 elements together during battle. Cost, 500,000 MP. Duration, 30 minutes. Cooldown, not applicable. A single use of this skill would take 500k worth of MP, but Shiro thought that it was worth it. Since the skill allowed her to fuse elements together, she'll be able to create the upgraded forms of each element, much like what happened to her ice when it became glacial. If she was to use this skill on Dark Star and Light, she would probably be able to create something that is similar to plasma. Not only that, she could even fuse the different elements with metal. This meant that she could further enhance her prowess as a nanomancer with this. If I had this skill back then, I could have fused the light element with my nanotech armor to boost up my light resistance by a few folds, allowing me to resist his attacks a bit better. This could be a game changer. Shiro thought to herself as the possibilities were seemingly endless. If she were to upgrade each element to their most powerful form and fuse them together, would she create something higher? "Mom, what did you get?" Een asked as she walked over. "I got a skill called Chimera Arts. It allows me to fuse 2 elements in combat, but it's only for 30 minutes. Shiro replied. "Hey, I got something similar, but rather than for 30 minutes, it's permanent. I only have 2 elements, so this is fine." Een smiled. "Oh, you have Dark Star and Shadow element. So what did you get out of it?" Shiro raised an eyebrow. "The product of fusing my Dark Star and Shadow element is Demolition Star element." Een smiled eagerly. "Seems like you want to show it to me. I'll make something now, give me a second." Shiro chuckled. Flicking her wrist, she sent a strand of nanobots to the side and slowly constructed a thick sheet of metal. However, while it is just a sheet of metal, the hardness and defensive value of this would make the blacksmiths in Varisha drool with greed. "Heh, watch carefully." Een grinned as she pushed both her hands outwards. Asterisk, boom. The mana surged towards Een, causing charred dust to scatter into the air from the gusts of wind that was formed due to this. Crouching down a little, Shiro stopped herself from being dragged along as the suction force was much greater than she had expected. As for Lysandra, she stabbed her sword into the ground and used that as a support. Asterisk, kish, kish, kish. Sparks flickered around Een as the amount of mana that was being gathered rivaled that of Lysandra's during her time as the light goddess's incarnation. "Collapse," she shouted out as 5 layers of tier 3 magic circles suddenly formed around the sheet of metal. Widening her eyes at the activation time, disregarding the fact that Een became a mana hoover for a while, Shiro couldn't believe that Een was able to activate each of the magic circles within the half-second gap. Before anyone realized, an orb of light appeared in the center of the sheet. Asterisk, crack. Fractures littered the metals as the orb expanded instantly, consuming everything within its range and left a rather deep crater in the spot. Huh. How was it? Ian smiled as her face was a little pale. Demolition Star element is very powerful, but the mana consumption is huge. It doesn't take points, but rather percentage to fuel the spells, she said while falling back onto the ground. Shiro didn't say anything as she walked over to the crater and tried to pick up a small piece of debris. But before she could even grab it properly, it scattered apart into ash. What do you think will happen if you used it against someone that was at a higher level than you? Shiro asked curiously. It depends. Anyone lower level than me will be killed without exception. However, for those who are higher than me, depending on their stats and other factors, the skill may just shatter apart. Ian shrugged. So, it's rather situational if we were to use it to fight against people that are higher level. A bit troublesome, but it shouldn't be too bad. Shiro nodded. What about you, Lisa? What did you get? Me? Well, I did get a chimera-type skill that allows me to fuse things together, but it's locked right now. I only have one element unlocked, so it can't fuse with anything. Even after all this time, I still haven't been able to use my second element. Lysandra replied while looking down on her hands. She had known about her second element for a while now, but no matter what she had done, she couldn't find out anything about it, never mind unlocking it. No worries. As long as you got something out of it, it's good enough. Shiro nodded her head. She understood that for someone like Lysandra, it may take longer to unlock their second element, and that was fine. They had more than enough firepower in the party for now, and this was just a fragment too. If they included everyone, Lyrica, Sylvia, Madison, and some potential candidates, they could rival a small faction all by themselves. Anyways, before we get to the last boss, how's your MP doing, Ian? Shiro asked as she looked towards Ian. Not good. Might take a while. Ian replied. All right, we'll make a temporary camp for now. Once Ian gets her MP back, we'll go fight the fifth boss. Shiro said as they agreed. Sitting around the camp, Shiro looked at the item, Chimera Core. Chimera Core, orange. An item that can be used on either weapons or armor. One can fuse skills together using this, and the effects will be permanent. Use at your own risk as the skills used for the fusion will disappear. The skill produced in the fusion is guaranteed to be better than the materials. However, the skill may or may not be situational. Maximum of 3 skills allowed for fusion. Should I gamble or not? Shiro thought to herself. If she used this, she'll get a very powerful skill at the cost of 3 weaker skills. But the clear downside is that the skill may have harsh restrictions. A potential situation would be her getting a high-rank sword skill, but the restrictions could be that she needed to have a sword-based class. What to do? She wondered to herself. Right now, her sword technically had 5 skills. Element Shift, Ataraxia, and the 3 celestial runes, Kara Lire and Era. All of them were amazing skills in their own rights. In the end, she decided to save the core for now since she was bound to get more skills in the future. Who knows? She might even be able to get a skill from the 5th boss. As the group rested at the camp, the people outside had started to give up on their survival. It's been too long. If she was holding against the 4th and 5th boss, she would be dead by now. Kier shook his head. But you've seen how powerful she is. I'm sure she's just finding a way out now. Isaac frowned. If she was as powerful as we believed her to be, why hasn't she come out yet? If she survives against the bosses, she should, in theory, reach the exit by now. There's nothing she can gain from staying inside the dungeon. Isaac stayed silent as he didn't know how to respond. Kier was right. Even if he wanted to believe in Shiro, he had to admit that her chances of survival were quite slim considering the fact that she hasn't come out yet. No one would willingly stay in a raid with 2 bosses roaming around, especially since the 4th one could ambush her at any moment like how it had ambushed them. Little did he know, the 4th boss had already died against Shiro. Give up on her. Even if she is alive, the best thing we can do is clear this raid so that everyone is forcefully ejected from inside the raid. Kier narrowed his eyes. Fine, but we're bringing as many pills and potions as we can. The Argent family will help you so that we can decrease the amount of time we spend on each boss. Isaac suggested. That is fine. We still have a set of return stones since you guys haven't gone in for a second time yet. We're allowed some leeway with how reckless we are. Kier nodded. People without the fear of death could perform at much better standards than normal. Since they have an item that could guarantee their survival, as it had demonstrated once already, they can fight without worry. Plus, if they were to bring pills and potions that boosted their overall attack power, along with Isaac who is desperate in clearing this raid, the overall performance of the party will at least double. It's a shame that she's dead, but at least we got some information. I can't believe that there is a fifth boss. Kier thought with a shake of his head. Straightening out his jacket, he had his escorts call for the other raid members. They were going to clear this raid as quickly as they could. ####. So then, just to make sure that my information is correct, the boss has 2 active skill, 1 passive skill, and 1 party wipe skill, correct? Shiro asked. That's all I can see, yes. I don't know if there are more skills which he is hiding. Camner nodded his head. All right. Root skills that take time to activate are easy to deal since we're able to cancel its activation. But once it activates, it'll become troublesome. His passive is also quite easy since all 3 of us in the party can fly. While I can't fly as well as you two, it's enough for now, Shiro said while glancing over at her 2 daughters. One was a phoenix and the other was an angel. When he uses his party wipe skill, I want you to spark his explosive clouds for him. In this time, I'll grab Lisa and retreat into the rift. This is how we're going to deal with his party wipe skill. As a boss that passively emits explosive clouds, he is annoying for melee fighters. But it wouldn't matter if all of us is fighting against him while we're in the air. Shiro grinned. Hearing this, Camner couldn't help but wonder what the Hellhound did in his life to deserve Shiro as an opponent. But I can barely fight from afar. While I do have my light swords, they don't do too much damage. Lysandra asked. Don't worry about that. I'll be making you a weapon to fight against the boss. I can also use this time to test out my new skill. Shiro replied with a smile. Her theory was that if Lysandra was to use her rail snipers that have been fused with the light element, a synergistic effect should occur between the 2 of them, boosting up the attack damage by a few %. As for Ian, well, she didn't need to worry about Ian since she could go crazy. Without anyone on the field, she is free to use all of her spells without restraint. Do you need me to do anything? Camner asked as he tried to smile. However, as an insectoid, he didn't exactly have the facial muscles to make a decent smile. Just wait by the side. Shiro shrugged. He didn't need him to be taking their share of the contributions and loot now, did she? Heis. I figured as much. Camner sighed. Anyways, we'll sleep for now since it's getting quite late. Setting up camp, they went to sleep. Naturally, Shiro had Camner sleep outside while bounded by nanotech wires. The next day, they made their way to the giant hole the Chimera had made when it ambushed them. Looking down into the hole, they could see the 5th boss sitting there as usual. Seems like he doesn't move around much. Do you think he's guarding something? Shiro narrowed her eyes. Perhaps. I've tried to move him, but he never budged. Camner shook his head. Well, it's not our problem. You too. Come here. I'll be making you some armor now, Shiro said as she called the duo over. Placing her palm on their shoulders, nanobots started to spread out and harden into a set of armor. You should bring out your wings too, so that it won't hinder your range of motion, she suggested. Adjusting the armor, she made several boosters and flight stabilizers so that they could readjust themselves quicker should they be under fire. This should do it. I've already uploaded a few movement and passive buff skills to the armors so you can examine them yourselves to see how they are. As for the weapons, just tap the magnetic discs around your waist, and they'll create the weapons for you. Naturally, the weapons will have the skills uploaded to them. Shiro explained. You can add skills yourself? Camner asked as he had never heard anything about this. Of course. As long as I get my hands on a piece of equipment, I can recycle it down to enhance the quality of my nanobots. Not only that, if they have any skills, I'll be able to store it in my database and print it out onto any armor I make, Shiro said, pointing at her head. Of course, I can't do anything about said armor. For some reason, I'm not able to receive anything from said armor. It might be because they're not technically a proper piece of armor, but rather a whole that's broken into several pieces. Even if a skill is part of that piece rather than the set effect, I can't receive the skill. Otherwise, I would have recycled this piece with the root skill, you know? It's a shame, but I can't really complain. I'm already getting quite a few skills from individual pieces already. Shiro shrugged her shoulders. However, Camner was speechless. Why do you make it sound so simple? This is simply ridiculous, okay? Hell, if all of Aria knew that your class allowed them to recycle low-level percentage skills onto anything you make, they'll literally revolt regardless of the dangers. Aren't they doing that already, though? Shiro raised an eyebrow. Yes, but it's rather tame if you can call it that. The only thing we know about your class right now is that it can make anything you think of and is highly resistant. As long as one has the blueprints to a weapon, they can make it as long as they have the mana. They know nothing about you recycling and printing skills. Kanner explained. But isn't that the main benefit of the Snowmancer class? While we inherently have two elements and can make anything we want as long as we have the blueprint, it's just a more powerful metal mage if you boil it down. It's the recycling aspect that makes it incredible. Well, you're right about that. I guess the B***starred must have locked down all information regarding this then. It's either that or he didn't know about it either. He replied with a shrug. It sounds something that he'll do. But ignoring the light B***starred for now, we got a boss to kill. Shiro grinned. Flicking her wrist, she sent out a few spikes made from nanobots that would camouflage their presence. After all, if she was to prepare a huge spell, the hound would notice immediately. Aiming down the sights, Shiro flicked a switch as the ambient mana surged towards her. Activating her chimera skill and fusing the light and metal elements together, she watched as light particles wrapped around her sniper. The matte black pieces of metal turned white with golden highlights around the edges. The ominous red energy surging in the body of the sniper shifted to that of a gentle blue. Lysandra did the same and tapped the magnetic discs on her waist. As the sniper was being formed, a strand of light exited Lysandra's body and entered the sniper. Knew it, Shiro muttered as she saw this scene. From her connection to her nanobots, she could clearly feel Lysandra enhancing the overall power of the sniper. Ian, ready your spell too. Since the boss hadn't noticed them yet, it was a prime opportunity to deal as much damage as they could. Got it, Ian nodded. Remembering what Shiro had told her, she didn't use her new element due to the phenomenon that it causes. Otherwise, they risked drawing the boss's attention, ruining their chance. Pressing both of her palms together, she furrowed her brows as sweat dripped off her face. She was currently condensing a spark of Dark Star element so that she could increase its power. Once it reached its limit of compression, she would apply another layer of Dark Star over it and continue the compression. The end result was a pure white spot of light that would flicker with slight traces of black and purple. While it was the same size as a normal Dark Star spark that she would usually make, its power was far stronger. Ready? Shiro asked as her sniper was reaching its limit as well. With her skill that increases the power of the bullet the longer she aimed down, her next shot was already 3 times as strong as what it should be normally. Both Lysandra and Ian nodded their heads. Fire, she shouted out. Just as Shiro shouted out fire, Ian released her control on her orb of light and sent it towards the boss. Asterisk boom boom boom. The surrounding cave started to rumble as the attacks met their target. Both Ian and Shiro's pierced a hole through the Hellhound's body, while Yin's attack completely annihilated his torso. Asterisk Yura. Anger overwhelmed his senses as he glared at the 3 that were flying in the air. With 3 wounds that would have been extremely lethal for other monsters, it was almost a miracle that he managed to survive. Demonic Hellhound, LVL 60 boss. HP, 55, 300, 000, /100, 000, 000. MP, 100, 000, 000, /100, 000, 000. TCH, only less than half HP. Shiro clicked her tongue as she had wished they were able to deal more damage. Anyways, as we've discussed, counter all of its skills and let's kill it, she said while diving towards the boss with 2 rail cannons in her hands. Asterisk URH. Instantly activating his berserk skill, the Hellhound knew that it should go all out or else it'll die. As the metal armor separated itself from the Hellhound, it revealed his true form. A mass of shadows and red mist which would constantly merge together before splitting apart once more. A with acute Nuyo. For morning starts formed from all the metal on his body and were connected by spiked chains. In his berserk mode, he'll stay like this for around 5 minutes. The damage he takes is probably reduced considering the fact that he's shifting through layers of tangibility. She thought to herself, you two continue to attack. I'll be tanking as we planned. Shiro called out as she disassembled her rail cannons. Changing it into a spear, she activated her skills as well to make up for the gap in stats. While she was powerful as a level 53 and could kill most level 60s with relative ease, a Berserk level 60 raid boss was something that she should be careful with. Looking at the giant morning star that was flying towards her, Shiro narrowed her eyes and readied her sword. Currently, she had Element Shift, Celestial Armament, and Celestial Element Wheels activated. Flickering past the morning stars, she twisted her body and slammed her staff into the chains. Dang. SSS. Taking in a sharp breath, Shiro realized that she underestimated how heavy the metal was. Even when she was using Phantom Path to redistribute the weight, it barely budged. Wait, if the armor was this heavy, could the boss be weighed down? Shiro muttered as her eyes widened. Feeling danger behind her, she instantly used Faded Snow movement that she retained even after her evolution. Gah! Coughing up a mouthful of blood, she was barely able to avoid the boss's attack as his claw phased through her body. While the Faded Snow movement made a portion of her body into snow, it wasn't able to fully nullify the damage. Her body shot towards the ground like a broken kite as she quickly readjusted herself. Broken ribs and internal bleeding. TCH, what a heavy hitter. She thought to herself as she did a quick damage assessment and activated her life fire. In one hit, the boss had pushed her health back to the halfway point. An eye for an eye, she mused. Twisting her body, Shiro dodged the Hellhound's next attack. Unlike before, she was now prepared for the sudden change in speed. Dodging his claw and the morning stars, she narrowed her eyes and formed a nanotech gauntlet. Loading it with all of the attack-boosting skills it could handle, she punched towards the Hellhound. Phantom Path. Sending the force through his body, Shiro rendered his defenses null. Unfortunately, the damage she dealt was rather small since he was currently in his berserk phase. But just as she was about to retreat, a second head emerged from the spot where she had punched and attempted to bite her. Glacial Touch. A giant wall of ice erupted around her and stopped the head from damaging her. However, cracks could be heard as the ice started to shatter apart. TCH, he's more troublesome than I thought. Shiro clicked her tongue. Glancing behind her, she saw that the boss used 2 sheets of metal to block Een and Lyssandra's long-ranged assault. While the sniper was able to pierce a hole in the metal sheets, more sheets would block the bullet's path, preventing it from harming the boss. *URH. A bad feeling rose up in Shiro's heart as she quickly entered the rift. When she exited, she saw 3 copies of the boss, each in their berserk phase, glaring at her. Her previous spot had been completely pulverized and was replaced by a deep trench. Taking a deep breath, Shiro decided to use the Shadow Element Shift along with the Shadow Celestial Armament. That was because it acted similar to her Faded Snow movement and had a passive damage reduction. Plus, there were more benefits that suited her current environment. As they were in a cavern, there was plenty of shadows for her to move around in. Not only that, her speed received a massive increase whenever she enters one, so it'll offset the fact that she's fighting 3 berserk bosses now. Slamming her palms into the ground, a wall of shadows wrapped around her body while all 3 copies of the boss jumped towards her. But all they bit was empty air as Shiro had flickered behind them. After activating the shadow versions of her skills, her outfit was changed into her slightly revealing shadow armor, so she layered a nanotech chest plate over the top to cover herself. The matte black armor with red highlights worked rather well with the shadow armor as it made her look like a death god, ready to reap the souls of the living. Twisting her body, a ray of dark sword energy cut deeply into their backs, but no blood was spilled. *URH. A pulse of mana was sent out from the boss's body and pushed her back, creating some distance between the two of them. When the dust cloud settled, Shiro and the Hellhound made eye contact as they stayed still. Both were evaluating each other as they were planning their next moves. Summoning 2 copies of Ataraxia, she dashed towards the boss. Celestial Path. Magic circles appeared around the boss as she merged it with her Ice Chain skill, creating mana-absorbing chains. Realizing that the chains could be dangerous, the boss leapt into the sky and attacked the chains with his Morning Star. *Clang. As the two collided with one another, the chains were easily suppressed as Shiro clicked her tongue. Celestial Path was great for dealing with mages and magic, but lacked any physical prowess. This naturally went for her chains as well, since their main purpose was to drain the boss of his reserves. This fight might be more troublesome than I had expected, Shiro muttered with a frown. All she needed to do was keep it occupied for the duration of his berserk skill, but that was easier said than. As the fight continued, the situation wasn't looking too good for Shiro. Her MP was barely holding on even with all of her skills that boost MP regen. Celestial Rune Kara, Element Field Affinity, Mana Leech, and several others that she's applied to her armor on top of mana coils that gather the ambient mana. All of this wasn't enough to balance out the amount of mana she was using to keep up with the boss. While Ian and Lysandra were able to damage the boss, it was barely able to dent his HP bar. Unfortunately for Shiro, she couldn't fly into the air either, as the boss clearly demonstrated that he had the ability to ambush Ian and Lysandra if she wasn't keeping him at bay. By doing so, it increases the chances of those two dying to the boss. The 5-minute berserk limit should be coming up soon, Shiro thought to herself as she dodged his attacks. There were times where dodging would be difficult since his passive littered explosive clouds around the arena. Lysandra would take care of the cloud by detonating them herself, but there were moments where she wasn't able to shoot them. Flipping her body backwards, Shiro swiped her hand forward and sent several shadow tendrils to try root the boss. These tendrils were naturally enhanced with Celestial Path as she was preparing for the final phase after Berserk. *URH. Dispersing the tendrils, the Hellhound became desperate as his movements started to get sluggish. Time's up, Shiro thought as her lips curved into a smile. After a few minutes of intense concentration, the feeling of seeing that light at the end of the tunnel was almost intoxicating. But she knew that if she was to relish in this feeling now, she would expose herself to harm. Lysandra also noticed the boss's movements and turned to Ian. The boss should be ending his berserk skill soon. Let's end it in one shot, she said as Ian nodded her head. Clasping her hands together, she started to condense her dark star element once again. As soon as the berserk skill ended, the boss's doppelgangers faded away while the weapons broke apart and reassembled themselves on the boss's body. Chance. Shiro grinned and slammed both hands down onto the ground. The period right after the berserk skill ended is where the user is most vulnerable as they're experiencing the backlash. In this moment, they aren't able to defend themselves since they're trying to adapt to the sudden change in their body, hence a perfect opening for an all-out attack. 2 Tier 3 magic circles expanded out from under the boss as shadow tendrils latched onto him and started to drain away at his mana, weakening his resistances. Not only that, but since the shadows were gained from Ian, they had their corrosive effects and started to eat away at the boss's armor. Ian now, Lysandra called out when she saw Shiro restrain the boss. Boom. As their attacks landed on the boss in his weakened state, they pierced a hole through his waist and severed his body in half. Shiro, knowing that the boss may still be alive, stabbed towards the boss's head to make sure that he's dead. Layering her sword with light element, she compressed it into a fine edge and stabbed deeply into his skull and exploded a pocket of mana in his brain, turning it into paste. A series of notifications filled the edge of her peripherals as she was able to level up to 55. 2 levels at once. Holy crap. She couldn't help but mutter. It had been quite a long time since she had leveled up twice at once, since the last time that happened was a special exception. First kill rewards for Demonic Hellhound. Plus title, Demon Conqueror. Plus skill, Explosive Miasma. Plus skill, Demonic Frenzy. Much like the title she gained from the Chimera, she had increased damage and suppression against demonic beings. A useful title for when she heads to the front lines in this world where the demons roam. As for the skill, Explosive Miasma, she can summon an explosive cloud that detonates on command. Naturally, this was a type of charge-up skill that increases damage depending on how much MP she uses. As for the final skill, it was a berserk skill. Demonic Frenzy. For 5 minutes, you enter a frenzy where all of your stats are doubled. After 5 minutes, you suffer a 90% penalty to your stats for 5 days and will be incapacitated for 30 minutes. Dark-type elements receive a 50% increase in effectiveness. Cost, not applicable. Duration, 5 minutes. Cooldown, 5 days. While the penalty for this skill was quite harsh since she is basically dead once the effect ends, the fact that it doubles her entire stat board was amazing, especially on higher levels. It will allow her to fight people that were much higher level. Not only that, if she stacked it with her other berserk skills, she could potentially fight against level 100s without the use of level up items. Naturally, this was under the assumption that the level 100 didn't use berserk or any status boosting skills. Otherwise, she'll have to use her silver dagger that propels her to B tier in order to survive. As for the items that she received for the kill, she got a few weapons and a full set of level 60 purple set armor. However, unlike her level 60 wyvern set armor that focused mostly on the INT stat, this one placed its focus on the STR and AGI stat. This armor should suit Lyrica quite well since these two stats are what she specializes in. Shiro thought to herself. Once she was done with checking out her items, she looked at her updated stat board. In just a single raid, she was able to increase her level to 55. Name, Shiro. Race, Mystic Fae. Title, Shadow Empress. Proficient Monster, 231/500 humans killed. Fratricide, 1 woman battalion. Creator of the Frozen Hell series. Incomplete. Ice Princess, creator of Style Azura's Path. Eternal Ice Maiden, Corrupted War Maiden, Chimera Slayer, Demon Conqueror. Level, 55. Class, Mystic Sylph Queen, Snowmancer. HP, 1402, 500/1, for 02, 500. MP, 3, 128, 070/3, 128, 070. STR, 11,000, plus 100. VIT, 10,000, plus 200. INT, 20,000 22,000, plus 750. AGI, 15,000, plus 450. Dex, 12.000, plus 100. Def, 6,000, plus 100. Equals title bonus. Unassigned points, 2,000-0. Attunements. Glacial, Tier 3, augmented with Eternal Ice. Lightning, Tier 3. Metal, Tier 3. Shadow, Tier 3, augmented with Calamity's Will. Dark Star, Tier 3. Light, Tier 3. Balance, 27 bronze errands plus 200.6 million US. Skills. Mystic Sylph Queen. Tier 3 Eternal Ice Magic. Tier 3 Lightning Magic. Tier 3 Metal Magic. Tier 3 Light Magic. Passive Regeneration. Blessed by Ice. Faded Snow Movement. Glacial Aura. Glacial Touch. Elemental Breath. Elemental Field Affinity. Fey Illusions. Element Shift. Celestial Element Wheels. Snowmancer. Nanotech Engineering Tier 3. Frozen Hell Series. Frozen Slumber. Azure Hell Fire. Calamity Trident. Ice Drake's Feast. Ice Palace. Ice Demon's Calamitous Domain. Calamity Dragon Arrow. Ancient Healing Arts. Fire of Life. Style Azura's Path. Phantom Path. Azura Sword Path. Celestial Path. Sword Skills. Refraction. Soul Sword. Sword Domain. Other. Minimap. Inspection. Disguise. Mana Barrier. Combust. Heavenly Constellation. Aurora. Celestial Armament. Chimera Arts. Explosive Miasma. Demonic Frenzy. Shared Skills. Dark Star Empowerment. Tier 3. Ice Chain. Tier 3. Shadow Cloak. Tier 3. Rift Walker. Tier 3. Shadow Affinity. Tier 3. Dark Star Affinity. Dark Star Seraphim. Tier 3. This had propelled her HP through the 1 million point threshold easily, while her Northern Mariana Islands breached the 3 million mark. While her HP and MP were low for a monster at level 55, the fact that it was accompanied by intelligence, battle experience, and a plethora of skills made her much more dangerous. So then, shall we have a look at what the doggo was guarding? Shiro asked with a smile as she watched Lysandra and Camner drop down in front of her. Since Lysandra was linked to her, her level was also 55. As for her level increased to 56. Once we're done with that, I believe it should be my time to go. Camner chuckled softly. I'm surprised that you've accepted it so easily. Not that I'll let you go, of course. Shiro shrugged. Atonement for my crimes, I suppose. I can only blame my luck for running into you. Ha ha. Camner laughed. Smiling slightly, Shiro walked towards where the hellhound had rested in the time leading up to the fight. There was a hatch of sorts as the hellhound had been resting on top of it. Opening it with some difficulty, Shiro narrowed her eyes when she felt a burst of killing intent from the room. Interesting, she muttered and jumped down, landing softly. Ian, Lysandra, and Camner followed behind shortly. The room was dimly lit as it was lacking any kind of decoration. From the center of the room, a sword was stabbed into the ground and emitted an eerie red aura that gave the room a red hue. The entirety of the sword was black, while the sharp end of the blade was that of a neon red. Its shape was reminiscent of a mix between a long sword and a katana. Understanding that the sword was the source of this bloodthirst, Shiro narrowed her eyes and walked up to it. Sealed Godslayer sword, Akram LVL? Red. A sword that belonged to one who was rumored to slay gods. Unfortunately, his fate was unknown as only his sword remained. Those who had attempted to claim this sword fell into insanity as their body was taken over by the Godslayer. Sealed Godslayer sword? Shiro muttered in suspicion. She had no idea why a sword like this would even appear in a low-level raid. Not to mention, one would find it easily after defeating the last boss. Mom, that sword is giving me a bad feeling, Lysandra said as she furrowed her brows. Her skin was a little pale, while wings quivered ever so slightly. She didn't know if it was natural or if it was from fear of the sword. Really? I think it's rather okay. Ian raised an eyebrow. Unlike Lysandra, she seemed to enjoy this kind of atmosphere since her body was rather relaxed. Could it be because of her race? Lysandra is part of the divine race as her class is soul-bound archangel. The divine race is closely tied to God, so for her to have this reaction near a Godslayer sword is rather normal. Shiro thought to herself, are you going to try and claim it, my goddess? It may help you fight the B** starred if it really has slain god-like entities. Camner asked. Maybe, but there is also the risk of losing oneself. The will of a person who slayed gods. I wonder how powerful it is. Shiro couldn't help but mutter. At her peak, she was only a tier 6, far from a tier 8 god. A being that could slay a god was most definitely stronger than she was at her prime. Whether or not she could claim it was quite uncertain. Everyone stayed silent since they knew that Shiro was thinking about the chances. She could boost her level and use her berserk skills, but she didn't know if they'll affect the outcome. As she was debating on her chances, she felt the bloodthirst surrounding the sword surge towards her, as if wanting to crush her under its presence. You dare challenge me? Shiro raised an eyebrow and released her own killing intent in retaliation. Asterisk, boom. The dust in the room was blown away from the clash as the trio behind her quickly retreated a little. Just the killing intent from the sword made them feel unsafe, never mind the combined might of both Shiro and the sword. As her killing intent surged, Shiro frowned when she noticed that the sword was keeping up with her with relative ease. Taking a deep breath, her face became cold as the temperature dropped rapidly. While she was a mystic sylph queen right now, her origins still traced back to Snow Girls, hence why her ice element was most dominant, despite the fact that she had been using other elements during this time. Ice spread across the room, shattering some of the loose debris into dust, and slowly crept toward the sword. Asterisk, KRRR. Ping. However, when the ice came into contact with the sword, it shattered apart as if it was hit by a great force. While the entire room was frozen over, only the sword was unaffected. Narrowing her eyes, Shiro decided to claim this sword for herself. I don't believe that I can't conquer you. She grinned and walked towards the sword. The closer she was, the stronger the retaliation from the sword. Deep cuts and cavities were formed around the room as a result of their clashing intents. When she was just a few steps away from the sword, injuries started to appear on her body as blood flowed down her sleeves. Ignoring her injuries, she reached out to the sword and pulled it out in one swift movement. Asterisk, thump thump. A heartbeat could be heard as Shiro's eyes lost focus. The killing intent, which had been filling the entire room, vanished in an instant. Standing silently, Ian and Lysandra kept their eyes on Shiro, just in case she makes any abnormal movements. Meanwhile, Shiro found herself standing on top of a mountain while a man, clad in demonic armor, evaluated her. So you picked up my sword, he said coldly. And what if I did? Shiro grinned. She could feel his pressure crushing down on her as it tried to get her to kneel. Releasing her own aura to offset this pressure, she was able to resist the urge to kneel, albeit some difficulty. Out of all the people who had been sent to this world because of my sword, you are the first to have picked it up. A level 55 with the kind of killing intent to match my sword is impressive. He narrowed his eyes. Who is the target of your vengeance? Who has offended someone like you? He asked curiously. Why do you ask? Shiro squeezed out. After he noticed that she resisted his pressure, he had increased it little by little. Right now, the ground around her had sunk down due to this. I want to know if you're suitable for my sword. Even though I am dead, my hatred for the gods burned brightly. My sword shall be used to behead another, and I refuse to hand it over to someone useless. He narrowed his eyes. I see no problem in telling. My enemy is the tier 8 light god, Ikari Lumiere. Shiro replied as the god slayer became silent. Why do you know him? For a proud god like him, it is impossible for him to visit such a newly integrated world like yours. He asked. He doesn't know me in this life. He is my enemy from my last life. I was his companion long before he was even tier 6, but he betrayed me when I surpassed him in strength. Shiro replied slowly as she was on the verge of kneeling. Putting strength in her body, she kept her knees above the ground. A reincarnator. This raid had always been a trial grounds for those who hold grudges against gods. This time it was for a man called Kamner, but it seems like I was quite lucky for you to appear. I do not need to hear your full story since your killing intent is more than enough for proof. But I do need to see one thing. He narrowed his eyes dangerously. Oh, and that is? Shiro asked with a forced smile. Your soul. Asterisk, boom. Before she could even react, a black chain stabbed into her chest. Reeling the chain back, the god slayer widened his eyes when he saw her soul. What the hell is that? He muttered. Of all the souls he had seen, Shiro's takes the #1 spot for biggest anomaly. Normally, a person's soul should be an illusionary figure of them holding their most suited weapon. The color of the soul would vary as criminals would have darker souls. But this wasn't the case for Shiro. Her soul was shrouded in a pure black fog that doesn't allow for one to see its true form. One could only see a pair of glowing red eyes that was filled with dense killing intent, one that even made him feel unnerved. For the amount of corruption in her soul, she should be a mindless beast right now with a pure black name icon. But to his surprise, she was completely sane and is even unaffected by this. If I give my sword to her, what kind of monstrous being would she become? He chuckled. If she was given enough time, he can guarantee that no god will be able to stand up to her. I, God Slayer Vulcan, now bind my sword, Akram, to a new host, for she shall be the next slayer of gods. He grinned, summoning his sword and plunged it into her soul. While Shiro was integrating with the sword, Lysandra, Een, and Kamner watched with serious faces. They didn't know what had happened, but it felt like her aura had changed. It became sharper and more menacing, as if everything in the world was below her, even gods. As time passed, she opened her eyes and looked down on hand. Examining the sword, Shiro turned her gaze towards the trio. Seems like I was able to integrate with the sword. She smiled. Oh my god, I was worried there. Een cried out as she sat down. Her legs had become jelly after being exposed to her threatening aura for an extended period of time. As for Lysandra and Kamner, they didn't fall over since their legs had locked out and they were forced to stand. Yeah, I met the previous owner and had a small chat. Seems like he was quite satisfied with me since he didn't kill me. Shiro chuckled. Looking at her sword, she was more than satisfied, especially since it was another soul-bound sword like Ataraxia. Akram, the God Slayer's sword, sealed, LVL 55 red, plus 5,500 attack, plus 4,000 sharpness, plus 3,000 attack speed, plus 3,000 ignore defense, plus 40% critical chance, plus 80% critical damage, plus 50% suppression against divine type being and divine type element. Skills, Akram. Other skills are locked away for the time being. Akram, your body is infused with a special element that suppresses a god's power. However, against anything that isn't a god, you siphon a portion of their power and stack it onto your own stats for a limited amount of time. Current siphon limit, 20% of their stats. Backlash, You suffer a severe decrease in your stats for 10 days. Cool down, 10 days. Soulbound, Shiro. Flicking her wrist, she threw up the sword as it exploded into black mist and entered her body. Now then, what shall we do with you? She asked as she turned to Camner. Don't worry, I got this. He smiled. Mana surged in his body as he suddenly dropped down onto the ground. Wait, did he just kill himself? Shiro blinked a few times to make sure that she wasn't hallucinating. I think he did. He nodded her head slowly. F***CK? My loot. Shiro cried out as they were sent out of the raid. ####. We've almost got it. Kier shouted out as they fought against the fourth boss, the Chimera. During their fight, they had suffered a few casualties despite the fact that they had returned stones. But, in exchange, they were on the brink of killing the boss. With less than 200,000 health left, one good hit was all that they needed to kill it. But just before the hit landed, a bright light filled their vision as they were teleported out of the raid. Kier's heart stopped in shock. Quickly looking around, he noticed the other parties that had entered were sent out as well. Impossible, he muttered in disbelief. There was no way that a different party had killed the final boss before them. What about all the resources and manpower they put into this? What about the casualties? However, his gaze soon locked onto a figure that he didn't believe he would see again. Miss Nitri, he said, attracting everyone's attention. As for Shiro, when the light filled her vision, she knew that she was about to get teleported out, so she quickly put on her mask and cloak to disguise herself. Young Master Osbar, fancy meeting you here. What's the occasion? Shiro smiled. Silence overwhelmed the area as the party made up of the strongest families realized that there was a big chance that it was Shiro's group who cleared the raid. Taking a deep breath, Kier calmed himself. Was it you that cleared the raid? He asked as some of the families slowly circled around her. Nope. After Isaac and Alaro escaped, I tried to leave as well with my companions, but the boss simply didn't let me. We were forced to run for quite a while before we finally lose him. Instead of coming out straight away, I decided to stay behind and raise our levels for a bit. As you can see, I'm now level 55 while Inya is 56. There's no way that the three of us could kill a boss that needed a whole party. Are you saying that us three can outperform the top families? Shiro asked in a harmless tone. Indeed. Forgive me, I wronged you. Everyone, since the threat is over, the Osbar family shall host a banquet for the families while a festival shall be funded by us. Let's celebrate this wondrous moment. Kier shouted out as the crowd cheered. However, while it seemed like he had accepted this explanation, his mind was still suspicious. He knew of her capabilities after all. There was a slight chance that she could indeed complete the raid. As they walked back to the Osbar mansion, Shiro naturally followed behind since she needed to retrieve Nimue. Alara and Isaac tried to talk to her. She welcomed Alara's company, but Isaac was rejected, much to his dismay. How did you even survive? I apologize for cursing you, but I'm very curious. We both know that your running was just a heavily simplified version, especially with the Hellhound at the bottom of the cavern too. Alara asked. Well, I just made use of the stalactites and stalagmites. Remember how I propelled my body during the fight against Isaac? I used the same principle to parkour my way out. Shiro shrugged. I suppose that does make sense. If it's you, I'm sure you can pull it off. Alara chuckled. But I wonder who cleared the raid. From the people we saw outside of the door, none of them could compare to our raid party. She frowned. Perhaps there's a continuation? Like how some dungeons will teleport you to another location. Perhaps a powerful party cleared the last boss and was transported elsewhere. Shiro suggested. It was a lie. That is a possibility. Alara nodded. Looking around a little, she leaned in a little closer to Shiro's ear. Just a small warning. Keep your guard up in the mansion since several families may still be suspicious. After all, it's quite a miracle that you three managed to survive. She warned with good intentions. Don't worry about it. It's going to be just fine. Shiro chuckled. Smiling wearily, Alara wondered where Shiro got her confidence from. What she doesn't know was that Shiro had managed to gain 2 berserk skills that boosted her stats by an outrageous amount. Even if it was a level 70 elder, she wasn't afraid. Once they arrived at the mansion, Kier ordered all of the maids and butlers to prepare for a banquet while he sent a few people to set up a festival for the civilians. After asking the party members to return to their rooms for now, Kier left without another word as Gilbert followed behind him. As she was walking away, Shiro glanced around her to make sure that no one was following her. She was planning on retrieving Nimue now, just in case anything goes wrong later in the night. Lisa, take Ian to the canteen and buy her the full menus minus the drinks. Pretend that you're celebrating. Shiro instructed since it would be dangerous to leave them in the room. Unlike her, their senses weren't as keen and wouldn't know if a skilled assassin was spying on them. All right. Nodding their heads, they did as they were told. Activating the skill shadow cloak, Shiro flickered through the mansion without anyone noticing. Even if some of the formations were active, Shiro created a small wristband that simulated Kier's aura, which she memorized when she first arrived and bypassed the security. Jumping into the rift, she phased through the elevator and landed on the lowest floor. Glancing around the corners, she checked to see if there were any guards. Once she was sure that she was alone, she revealed herself and walked towards the mana spring. "My queen, is it time?" Nimue asked curiously. Shiro had taken another dip in the morning and informed her that they were leaving for the raid. Now that she's returned at night, she assumed that it was because she planned to leave with her now. "That's right. You've stayed here for long enough. We'll be leaving tonight. By the way, don't take all of their mana. We don't want them to find out too early." Shiro smiled. Crouching down, Shiro placed her hand in the spring and closed her eyes. Nimue transferred herself into Shiro's mana realm as the springs slowly lost their luster. Of course, the mana was still plentiful, but it was no longer being replenished. Once she made sure that Nimue was in her mana realm, Shiro jumped into the rift and made her way back to her two daughters. As she arrived at the canteen, she couldn't help but notice the giant stack of plates that were being carried away by the maids. The way that they were hastily moving around and the fact that their face was very pale caused a bad feeling to arise in Shiro's heart. "Yo," she called out, sitting down on their table. "You done?" Ian asked while quickly swallowing some food. "Yeah." "Lisa, how much has she ate so far?" Shiro asked. "I believe that she's almost finished her second serving of the menu," Lisa replied as she was currently resisting her urge to throw up. Just seeing this much food made her nauseous. Carrot % pound dollar. Second serving. Shiro widened her eyes. Turning to Ian, she saw Ian hide her face behind a plate to avoid eye contact. Taking a deep breath, she gestured for one of the maids to come over. "Don't make any more food. Just finish the ones that are halfway done and we'll be fine," she said as the maid nodded. Sighing once more, she decided to eat some food too. Just looking at the way Ian eats made her question where all of her food was being stored. But when she saw her MP, her eyes widened. Ian LVL 56, Dark Star Calamity, Phoenix. HP 5000000/5000000. MP 15 250 700/10 0000000. Holy sh*T. You convert food into MP. Shiro widened her eyes. "Amen? I told you, this baby needs food to grow." Phoenixes can turn their entire body into their respective element. Naturally, this meant that we need a bigger container. My race passive allows me to overcharge my total MP to twice of my said limit. So right now, I'm just eating till I have 20 million MP. Ian replied. "I call bullsh*T. Shiro rolled her eyes. She could clearly see that Ian was being greedy. "You probably ate so much that the food was converted into mana to avoid you blowing up," she said while pointing at Ian. "You're right. Sis unlocked a unique skill called gluttony. She can store twice the amount of mana as long as she is eating. After she stops, the excess mana is slowly burned away." Lisa replied as she was there when Ian explained the skill. "Traitor!" Ian cried out as Lysandra sold her out. *sigh. At least it's a good skill. Just finish the meal for now. Shiro facepalmed. She could feel a headache coming up, but perhaps this was a good thing. Knowing that some of the families were suspicious of her meant that there might very well be assassinations later in the night. When they returned to their room, Shiro checked the room thoroughly to make sure that there was no danger. Nodding in satisfaction, she began the second part of her task, finding out who was sabotaging the raid and blocking information from leaving the city. The best way to do this was to send out a message herself. "Protect me while I can the net," Shiro said as Ian and Lysandra nodded. Crouching in front of the simulation pod, She pressed her palm against the systems and sent a strand of nanobots into the circuitry. Connecting herself with the internet, she sent out a fake message about the situation to see what happens. Guiding the message through the systems herself, she noticed tins of red light shooting towards the message, erasing it in an instant. Furrowing her brows slightly, her nanobot latched onto one of the strands and embedded itself like a parasite. She didn't take over it completely since that will result in the sending being notified that one of his strands had been erased. However, the sender seemed to be quite cautious since his strands had been going around in circles and difficult routes to avoid being followed. But soon, she tracked down the sender. It was linked to one of the biggest families in the city, the Cermak family. Seems like they're the rat in this city. Shiro narrowed her eyes. The young master wasn't anyone good, but neither was the family. But, if she was lucky, this may give her a chance at getting some decent loot to compensate the loss of her first clear rewards. Tapping her fingers, she split the nanobot into several pieces and had each of them spread through the entire Cermak internet system. She was going to dig out their secrets. While their firewall was strong, it was nothing in her eyes since her nanobots can easily override it. There won't be a problem if she became the firewall now, was there? Scanning through all their documents, Shiro discovered all of their illegal dealings with the slums and how it was cut off with the slums operation. Not only that, they were the main funder for the drug that would have killed a lot of people. This could be worse than I thought. She frowned in slight concern. If that was the case, then they may very well have extra copies of the drug on hand. Searching through their most recent documents, she found out that they had been in contact with an unnamed individual who provided them with the manpower. From all of the evidence that she's gathered so far, she guessed that this individual was linked with the twins from the slums since they mentioned their names quite a few times. Extracting all of the useful intel from the Cermak family, Shiro made a small USB and transferred the data. Opening her eyes, she stored the USB in her inventory and sat down on the table. Her face was serious as she now understood why they had been sabotaging the raid. "You two come here," Shiro called out. "I found out about who had been sabotaging the raid and why they did this. It's the Cermak family, the one that wanted to kill Ian. As for why they wanted to delay the completion of the raid, that was because they're buying time for reinforcements to come from somewhere. I don't know who it is, but apparently, they're connected to the slum gang leaders that were caught before. Their main goal is to get revenge on all of the main families and turn this city into a branch of their organization," she explained. "So what should we do for now?" Lysandra asked. "Nothing. Just be on guard and see what happens at the banquet. Depending on what happens, the elders may be there as well, so be ready to fight someone at a higher level at any moment." Shiro narrowed her eyes. She had her own plans that involved the Aspar family. "If I notify Gilbert about this, he should inform Kier. Since he didn't see my face the last time I passed him information, I should be able to pull this off one more." She thought to herself. Last time, she had informed the Aspar family using some notes and had even pissed Gilbert off. This time, she was going to do the same as repayment for Nimue. ####. Later that night, the banquet started as outfits were given to each guest. Naturally, they can wear what they want as well if they have it on hand. Shiro didn't care much about the outfit since she didn't have any intentions of revealing her true identity. While they stood out quite a bit in the banquet, people soon ignored them. As for the families that knew what was happening later that night, they didn't care about what she wore. Hell, they were even grateful that she wore something that will let them identify her better. Excusing herself for a short moment, Shiro went to the toilet. Activating Phantom Path, she walked over to Gilbert and bumped into him, leaving a note on the ground. "MN." Looking down at the note, Gilbert suddenly felt annoyance rise up in his mind. "Remember me, your old pal? Well, if you don't, let me remind you. I gave you the information regarding the slums, remember? Anyways, meet me in corridor 3 outside of this hall. I got something else to give you. Signed, Mystery Informer." Taking a deep breath, he informed Kier about this and left for corridor 3. "Come out," he demanded as he scanned his surroundings. "Nope. You still have that crappy attitude." Looking at the note that suddenly appeared, Gilbert held back his intention to lash out. "What have you called me out for then? You said you wanted to give me something, right?" he asked. "Yep. Have you ever wondered who was sabotaging the raid and why they did it?" Reading her question, Gilbert paused and frowned. "You know who it is?" He asked. Of course I do. Question is, do I want to tell you about it? Your attitude is annoying me, humph. Asterisk Poochie. Feeling like he had just burst a vein reading that slip of paper, he could imagine a person pouting while writing it. Taking a deep breath, he tilted his head back a little. I hope that you may enlighten this one about who the culprit is. He asked a little forcefully. Where's the sincerity? I'm not convinced. Gritting his teeth, Gilbert clenched his fist. I beg of you to tell me about who the culprit is. He knew that the young master had been looking for the culprit all this time. This is nothing compared to the kindness that Kier had shown to him. Fine. I'll stop playing now. The culprit is the Cermak family. Here's the evidence, and I suggest you prepare yourself. They're buying time for some outside faction to interfere with what happens inside the city. Signed, Mysterious Informer. Throwing down the last letter along with the USB containing the evidence, Shiro left for the party once more. She didn't want to be missing for too long now, did she? Walking next to Ian and Lysandra, she handed them some more food. It was only a few million points left till she reaches maximum capacity of 20 million MP. Glancing over at Gilbert, she saw that he whispered into Kier's ears and led him away. Seems like he's going to tell Kier about the USB. Shiro thought to herself with a small smile. Just as she was going to lead Ian and Lysandra elsewhere to have a change of pace, she was approached by a few of the prominent families. To what pleasure do I have to talk with you important people? She chuckled with sarcasm in her voice, clearly trying to provoke them. However, she already knew what they want as their desire is apparent from the way they look at her. Asterisk cough asterisk, we just want a better idea about what had happened in the raid. It's not often that someone is able to survive against two bosses and come out relatively unharmed. One of the people said. Glancing at their levels, Shiro saw that most of them averaged around level 65. 7 mage and 3 warrior types. I can handle this. She thought to herself. Well, luck is part of life. One cannot deny the impact of luck in a dungeon. Shiro shrugged. Well, since you say that, I believe that Miss Nitri has benefited quite well from the raid now. Would you perhaps share what you received? One of the mages asked. Oh, that will be my pleasure. The first item I received is called Fuck, and the second one is called You. With both of them combined, Fuck You is a very powerful weapon. Shiro grinned behind her mask. Their faces fell as they realized that she was messing with them. Do you take us for a fool? The mage narrowed his eyes dangerously. Oh no, I wouldn't dare. Here, I'll even show you the weapons. Shiro said as she pulled out 2 daggers that were secretly made using her nanobots. Fuck LVL 55 dagger purple. Fuck You set item 1/2. No attack rating or stat points as they match the user's attributes. ULVL 55 dagger purple. Fuck You set item 1/2. When paired, the daggers will ignore all defenses. Looking at the 2 daggers with suspicion, they couldn't believe that a weapon like this existed. However, while one could hide their name and level, they couldn't do the same for weapons. This set of daggers is rather peculiar. The mage forced a smile as the others agreed. Well, one cannot judge the system's naming style now, can we? Shiro shrugged. However, if the system could respond, it would have thrown a table at her already. You ungrateful piece of sh*t. What about the name I gave for your other skills? True. If anything, we can only bring it to a blacksmith so that we can rename it. Anyways, Miss Nitri, are you perhaps interested in selling this to us, and do you have anything else that you got from the raid? The mage asked curiously. Nope for both your questions. Shiro shook her head. Miss Nitri, I suppose you should know that holding on to something so precious may bring you trouble. Perhaps if you sell it to us, you'll be able to get something of equal value and even save your life in the meantime. The warrior warned. Oh, is that a threat? Shiro narrowed her eyes. You are overthinking a bit much. Now how about we discuss the details for cooperation? The mage smiled as they slowly surrounded the group of 3. But before things could escalate, Kier walked onto the stage and took the mic. Asterisk ahem. Can everyone hear me? He asked with a smile. Seeing a positive response, Kier nodded his head. So I hope that everyone is having a good time. But unfortunately, good times have to end since we've discovered something quite problematic. He said as his smile faded. I'm sure that most of you know about the sabotage problem that other parties had. We've managed to collect all the evidence needed to find out the culprit. Please move your attention to the projector. As you can see, This shows all of the dealings the Cermak family has with the previous slum leader along with their hand in creating the dangerous drug. Kier smiled as guards jumped towards all the Cermak family members that attended this banquet. As we speak, my guards should already be storming the land owned by the Cermak family in order to unroot this cancer that is spread in this city of ours. He continued as a new file appeared on the projection. Combined with some of our other intel, we realized that the reinforcement they're waiting for is the power backing up the previous slum leaders whom we've already dealt with. Their intention is to make this city theirs and for them to eradicate all of the families until only the Cermak family is left. Kier pointed at Lox and narrowed his eyes. This was a perfect chance since he had never liked the Cermak family too much for interfering with the Kasidan family. Lies, Lox shouted out as he couldn't believe that this information was found out. No matter how talented the hacker, their defense systems should have noticed it straight away. Little did he know, their opponent is someone who has full reign over the digital world. There is no use in denying. All the evidence has been gathered. And for someone who owns several beast-human slaves, what do you have to say for yourself? Kier glared at Lox. Flicking his wrist, recordings and audio records of Lox playing around with beast humans could clearly be heard. Some were rather forceful as well, which caused the female adventurers to glare at him with anger and killing intent. Anger flared up in Lox's mind as he gritted his teeth. All members, last resort, he shouted out as he flicked his wrist. An injector suddenly appeared on his neck as a translucent green liquid was injected into his veins. Asterisk, boom. His aura flared out, pushing the guards away from him while the other members did the same. Before anyone realized, the banquet hall was now filled with 7 giant monsters that had black skin and red runes all over their body. Blood enhancement. One of the Cermak family members shouted out as his body exploded into a pool of blood. Following his lead, the other 5 members killed themselves as well. The mass amount of blood surged towards Lox as his level was slowly increasing. Soon, it had reached level 60 but had no plans in stopping. Some people tried to interfere, but the blood stopped them from approaching. As all the blood was absorbed, Lox's ghastly figure could be seen. He had no skin to speak of and was only a mass of muscle and bones that would peek out from his body. Another set of bones wrapped around the outside of his body as it formed a protective cage. Artificial Goliath Lox, Stage 1, Level 70. Looking at his new icon, Shiro narrowed her eyes. She knew of a monster similar to what Lox is right now. An artificial creation made by alchemists that would mix monster genes with human genes to boost their power. At the cost of this would be one's class and potential in return for great physical prowess. When the monster reached Stage 4, their physical prowess would be so monstrous that only a level 150+ warrior-type adventurer could be a match. Well, I should probably kill it quickly while his guard is lowered. A level 70 should be quite a feast. Shiro grinned as Lox wasn't a dangerous monster in her eyes. No, it was just a mass of free XP. Summoning Ataraxia in her hand, her body flickered before anyone could react. A glove formed on her hand as she stacked all of the assassination skills that she had recycled previously. Asterisk, boom. I hope you can forgive me for taking this kill young Master Kier. Lox was clearly a danger. Shiro smiled as she looked at Kier. Behind her, Lox had lost his head and kneeled down lifelessly. Kier was speechless, and so was the rest of the people at the banquet. Despite having so many elders present at the scene, they weren't able to react to her killing Lox at all. Flicking her wrist, she collected Lox's corpse as a mountain of items appeared in her inventory. However, she wasn't able to take all of the items due to the sheer amount of items that Lox had kept in his inventory. Filtering out the trash, she piled them up where his corpse used to be. And now if you'll excuse me. Shiro smiled and bowed slightly. Seeing this, the elders from different families quickly gestured for the assassins to make a move. Since she had killed Lox, her body would be full of useful items. Plus, she also had the set dagger. While the name was rather peculiar, the effect of ignoring all defenses was something they couldn't miss out on. Ohaya? Seems like a few people are quite unhappy about this young Master Kier. Shiro chuckled. Jumping up, she flipped her body and avoided several attacks. Stand down. Kier shouted out in anger as his aura flared outwards. Slamming into the bodies of the assassins, they were sent sliding backwards. Our main goal is to eradicate the Cermak family for trying to kill all of us. You can settle your scores once the main threat is over. Young master, as a person with an unidentified background, shouldn't we detain her as well? One of the mages suggested while keeping their eyes on Shiro. Ho ho, so you suspect me, huh? Well, all I can say is that you should be careful of what you say. Who knows if a blade might appear and cut your neck? Shiro narrowed her eyes. Was that a threat? Another mage asked as he slammed his staff down in annoyance. Ha ha ha, you can think of it that way. Shiro smiled. Young Master Kier, we'll talk about compensation at a later date. Everyone attack. Grinning slightly behind her mask, Shiro pulled out Ataraxia and her god-slaying sword. A perfect time to test out my new sword. Flickering next to one of the assassins, she swung her blade lightly and was able to cut him in half. Are my words nothing but air? I said, stand down. Kier glared at the group. Raising up his hands, the night sky was illuminated by hundreds of white swords that flickered with a white flame. However, Shiro ignored this. She had already offended the Aspar family by taking the source of their mana springs. Redeeming a few bags of EXP before she left seemed like a fine choice to her. Plus, they had tried to kill her in the first place. Sword domain plus sword path plus refraction. A trail of illusionary swords filled the area as 4 heads was sent flying into the air. Nitri, are you provoking me? Kier frowned. Flicking his wrist, he sent 3 of the swords to detain her. I don't use fire in my presence, okay? Ing grinned. Appearing between Shiro and the swords, she sent out a wave of dark star element that started to devour the flame swords. Soon, nothing but a spark of dark star element could be seen floating around them. Gilbert, Kier shouted out as the party descended into chaos. Previously, it was Lox who was the biggest threat, but now they were focused on getting loot from Shiro's corpse. There was only 3 of them. Nothing to fear when the entire banquet of high-leveled adventurers were aiming to slay her. Inya, Lisa, you can leave for now. I'm going to try to rank up my title a little. It's been a while since I've killed some humans. Shiro said as her eyes glowed with a slight blue color. Understood. Lysandra nodded her head since she knew about Shiro's monster title. Grabbing Yin's shoulder, Lysandra dragged her away before she could continue to fight. With the 2 of them out of the way, Shiro could fight without caring about collateral damage. Stomping her foot down, a tier 3 magic circle appeared under her. Careful, one of the assassins shouted out. Since most of you want to kill me, it's fine if I retaliate, right? Shiro laughed. Frozen Hell, Ice Demon's calamitous domain. Asterisk, boom. A black aura erupted around her and formed a dome. Within this dome, black snow started to fall and corrode the attacker's armor, leaving their armor riddled with countless holes. Gah! URH. The sounds of adventurers dying could be heard. They couldn't see Shiro herself, but they could see the path of carnage that she had left behind. With her phantom path activated, hardly anyone could detect her. Pivoting on her right foot, she transferred her momentum and shifted her dash into an abrupt jump. TCH. Gilbert clicked his tongue when he saw Shiro avoid his attack. TSK, 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 little Gilbert. Don't attack an old pal like this, okay? Shiro giggled as she flicked behind him. I don't know you, he replied and swung his blade. Mystic Arts, Flash Sword. A thin veil of light covered his sword and teleported it next to Shiro's torso, threatening to cut her in half. Rift Walker. Appearing in front of him, Shiro narrowed her eyes and stuffed a piece of paper in his mouth before kneeing him in the jaw. Asterisk bang. Retreating back a few steps, Gilbert gritted his teeth and looked at the piece of paper. You hurt my feelings, little Gilbert. Despite us having interacted for so long, you act as if you don't know me. Signed. Mysterious Informer / Nitri. God damn it. Young master. She's the informer. Gilbert shouted out as Kier's eyes narrowed in on Shiro. If she was the informer as Gilbert had said, it meant that she was able to infiltrate their mansion with ease and even break through the security systems of all the big families, if she so wished. An existence like this, or rather, an anomaly like this, was dangerous for any city. If that's the case, Miss Nitri, I'm afraid that I have to arrest you. Kier asked. Ho-ho, young master wants to arrest me? Despite all the intel I gave, what about the time I showed everyone the danger of the drug? Shiro chuckled. Snapping her fingers, a cluster of light gathered at her fingertip and exploded into a blinding ray of light. Asterisk foo. Shielding their eyes from the light, they suddenly heard the soft sound of a flute. Fey illusions. As the melody continued, they found themselves in a withered forest that was slowly filling with red mist. It's an illusion. Does anyone have status-breaking skills? One of the warriors shouted out. IDGH. Before the man could finish his sentence, a pair of hands appeared in his visions and dug deeply into his eye sockets and sent lightning tearing through his brain, killing him instantly. Don't announce your skills, idiot. Shiro chuckled softly. Flicking the blood off her hands, she brought the ice flute back to her lips and blew on it gently. Following the melody, the trees started to move as roots tied against their legs. Shocked at the physical illusion, they quickly shattered the roots and retreated. However, that was part of Shiro's plan. With her placement of where the roots extended, she managed to herd all of her enemies into one area. Since I'm rather short on time, how about I kill you all in one go? Shiro asked sarcastically while her killing intent slammed into their bodies. Tensing up in place, they realized that they couldn't move. No, wait. Don't kill us. We're needed to protect this city from the invaders. What about the citizens? One of them shouted out in a panic. Haha, now you think about that? It didn't seem like that was on your mind when you tried to attack me. Shiro replied while tapping her fingers on the railing that she was currently sitting on. Shifting around slightly, metal shot out of the railings and collided with 7 swords that appeared in the air. TCH. Clicking his tongue, Kier couldn't believe that Shiro was able to accurately pick out his swords despite not seeing them. Well, my task has already been completed, so there's not many reasons for me to stay here. As for whether this city survives or not, it's not my problem anymore, is it? Your biggest families are fighting for benefits and had even wanted to kill a lone girl for loot. I don't think that this is a good incentive for me to help out now, is there? Shiro turned to Kier. That being said, young Master Kier, we didn't fight last time, did we? My companions stopped your escorts, and we never fought. How about we correct that now? She asked while pointing at him in a provocative manner. Very well. I want some questions answered anyways. Kier nodded as a red aura flared around him. But first, how about I even the playing field a little? Shiro grinned. What do you mean? Kier frowned. A little level up. She replied and snapped her fingers. Suddenly, all of the red mist that had surrounded her enemies started to spark. Explosive miasma. Asterisk, boom. Exploding into a giant ball of fire, Kier widened his eyes in shock and confusion. First, he hadn't seen her use a magic circle, so it couldn't be higher than Tier 1, the most basic types of spells. And second, no Tier 1 should have the kind of power to kill the elders along with the assassins. However, it did just that. What Kier doesn't know was that this was the special reward for being the first one to kill the Hellhound. Isn't that skill what the Hellhound used? Alara cried out in surprise as she watched from the sidelines. However, Isaac quickly covered up her mouth and pulled her aside before Shiro gets annoyed at them. While he may be a masochist, he knew that Shiro wouldn't hesitate to kill them if they interfered with her work. So it was you who completed the raid? Kier asked after hearing what Alara had shouted out. Nope. All I did was kill the second to last boss. I still missed out on the final boss. Shiro shrugged. But I apologize for the wait. Now the playing field is a bit fairer, wouldn't you say? She smiled and pointed at her icon. Nitri LVL 57 Elemental Sword Sage. After killing the level 60 elders with the assassins, she was able to increase her level by 2. A difference of 3 levels is a wide gap between geniuses. Kier replied. Stomping down, 3 Tier 3 magic circles erupted out from under him and encased his body in a layer of white flame armor. Raising up his hands, sparks of fire formed into swords and shot towards her. Child's play. Shiro grinned. Pulling out God Slayer and Ataraxia, she twisted her body and deflected all of the swords that stabbed towards her. Phantom Path. Flickering towards Kier, she kept her body low to the ground. Grabbing one of his swords, Kier swung it horizontally, causing a wall of flames to erupt out from under Shiro. However, she had already entered the rift the moment she had sensed danger. Exiting near Kier, she twisted her body and swung her black at the back of his body. Solari Arts, Defense. flicking his sword into a reverse grip. A trail of fire wrapped around his and protected his body. The force of the cyclone threw Shiro into the air as she was surprised at the reaction. Seems like his martial arts also transfers momentum, she thought with a frown. In that instance where she was thrown up into the air, she clearly felt all of the force she used return back into her body. Landing softly on her feet, she narrowed her eyes at Kier. "What's wrong? Didn't you say that you wanted to fight me?" he asked as he swung his sword. Solari arts, obliterate. Asterisk, boom. A cage of fire appeared around her, sealing away her paths of escape. Just the temperature alone was quite problematic to deal with. Taking a deep breath, she readied her swords. Chimera arts, she muttered. Suddenly, two elemental orbs appeared around her and started to draw in all of the ambient mana. Fusing the elements of Darkstar and Glacial, she had two conflicting elements trying to fight each other in the stage of fusion. Just the amount of mana that they were absorbing had weakened the effect of Kier's attack. Understanding that things would be ugly if he let her be, he quickly dashed towards Shiro. But before he could even use a skill, the Godslayer's sword had already appeared in front of him, ready to cut him in half. Quickly reacting on instinct, he raised up his sword in an attempt to block it, but widened his eyes in a mix of surprise and horror. The sword had phased through his attack as if it was just an illusion, but he could clearly feel the danger. It's that weird skill she used against Isaac, he thought to himself. Solari arts, dispersion, he shouted out as his body shifted into fire just before her sword could cut him. TCH, clicking her tongue, Shiro watched as Kier retreated. However, when he reappeared, he wasn't unharmed. There was a trail of blood dripping from the bridge of his nose. Any later, and he would have had a rather serious cut across his face. Full. Breathing out heavily, Kier didn't expect her reaction to be so swift. Despite trying to activate a dangerous skill, she was still able to multitask and keep him at bay. Asterisk, boom. A ray of light shot up into the sky as the fusion was complete. Temporary element added. Mystic Ice Star. Mystic Ice Star, huh? Interesting. She thought with a smile and coated her swords with a condensed layer of this element. As she did this, her blades seemed to be coated with an array of shining stars. Each swing would leave a small trail of particles behind that would freeze anything it touched. Round 2. She smiled. Asterisk bang. Cracking the ground beneath her, she decided to go all out and push her body to its limits without the use of berserk skills. Asterisk bang 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 bang. Kier tried to fend her off with his fire, but they were countered easily. Not only that, her sword seemed to grow stronger each time it dispersed his flames, almost as if it was absorbing his fire's energy. However, before she could continue the fight, she suddenly felt a shift in the mana as a large spell had just been invoked. Retreating a few steps, she looked into the sky. Mana threaded together into a thin thread of sorts and had covered the entire city in a dome. Not only that, lightning flickered through the threads, threatening to turn anyone into ash should they come too close. Fun time's over. You live. Now you better get USH*T together, or else this city is over. Shiro warned as she jumped onto the roof. Wait, what do you mean? Kier frowned. It seems like the reinforcements are here. We're trapped in a cage. She replied before disappearing. Narrowing his eyes, Kier sighed slightly before turning around. Alara, Isaac, and everyone else who is still alive. I want you to return to your families for the time being and warn them. A fight is about to break out, and we'll need every capable adventurer in this city. Kier commanded as they nodded their heads. Meanwhile, Shiro was making her way through the city at incredible speeds. Meeting Ian and Lysandra at the tallest tower, she glanced down at the city. We'll set up a few defensive measures around the city walls, then we'll intercept our invaders. Shiro grinned. Invaders? Ian furrowed her brows. Yup. Seems like the reinforcements that the Cermak family were waiting for had arrived. I don't like some of the families, but the citizens shouldn't suffer for their mistakes. Lessening their burden is a win-win for us, since we'll be getting a lot of EXP for trying to help them. Shiro shrugged. Oh, so you can say that we're getting a feast for helping them. Ian grinned as she understood what Shiro meant. Adventurers naturally held a bit more EXP when compared to their monster counterparts. Slaying 100 adventurers would yield more EXP than slaying 100 monsters of the same level. She knew that Shiro would stick to killing monsters unless humans provoked her therefore. The invaders were just a huge feast for Shiro. But there might be a lot of them. At high level 2, would we be able to take them on? Lysandra asked as she had her concerns. Short answer is no. Even if we're powerful, should they continue a constant bombardment, even we will need to retreat into the rift and run. Hence why we're going to be giving some to the families to kill. We'll loop around the back and bombard them from there. Once we do that, not only do we force them towards the city, it also prevents us from scaring them away. Shiro replied, I see. Lysandra nodded since that is indeed an option. By cutting off their escape option, they can increase the number of kills they get while also allowing the city to finish off the strays. Een, we'll be counting on you for the maneuvers. Shiro turned to Een. Don't worry about it, and count on me. Een patted her chest and transformed into her phoenix form. Jumping on her back, they flew into the air and used Rift Walker to bypass the cage. It's time to farm some EXP. Shiro thought to herself in glee. Her leveling speed had been quite slow, so this was a perfect opportunity.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.